Well, Tim, you're one of the most meticulous people I know when it comes to sound effect editing and database manipulation and cataloging. So I'm pretty excited to be able to talk to you about the things that you do. So let's start off with the Stream Deck there.
Yeah, so I was, you know that I've been playing a lot with the Stream Deck, and we've talked at various times about different things, and I know you've written a bunch of Apple events which allow us to do pretty cool things, and so yeah, let me switch my camera to the Stream Deck, and hopefully this will work, and I'll show you just sort of. I have the large Stream Deck, and this is sort of my top level. But if I go here to SoundMiner. If you can see it, I'll kind of talk you through a little bit of some of the things that I've been doing. And this is always changing, every week I'll have a different idea and stuff and trying to figure it out. But, one of the things I realized with 9 layouts and things, it's really convenient. And I think I'm sharing my screen still, right? Or not yet?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's still going. Okay. So this is my normal layout, and I view the normal categories that I'm looking at: category, full effects, name, description, designer, show, library. But I have like layout number 2 is set to show me the file name if I want to start coming in and manipulating file names, but it still shows me similar other categories. Layout 3 is my layout to show me show categories, show notes, show fields, things like that, show description, show category. And 4 is sort of the one that shows me sort of, I call it like my metric view, channel layouts and durations and date scan and stuff like that if I need to go investigating into
some sort of problem that might have happened. Yeah, you can see how old a file is or whatever.
Yes, particularly a lot of times what's happening lately is to look at the IXML track layout versus the normal channel layout if something's playing out the wrong speakers because somebody put the wrong thing in or something like that. And then 5 through 8, fluctuate or whatever. I don't think they're set right now. And then I have a button here that says plus fields or all fields. And from that, I can simply call up all the fields in case I want to define something really quickly. Mm-hmm. And actually, I think 8 right now is set up just to show file names. So if I wanted to build a new layout, I just hit 8 first and then, turn on the things that I want. So 8's a good sort of jumping off point. And then 9 is the one that I sort of use as a temporary thing. So let's say I was here and I made some modifications and I turned on a couple things. Well, I have a button here to store into layout number 9 really quickly. So nice. So 9 is always my sort of fluctuating layout, which is just something I can modify on the fly because, different situations, might create a custom layout that I only really need for that little project. So between these, I can kind of get at all the layouts and store one into 9 and quickly get back to my main layout anytime I want. And, these things are hotkeyed. I know, you can hotkey all these things.
So that's interesting because you're just using the standard Stream Deck interface right now to do the layout switching, right?
Yeah.
You're not using Keyboard Maestro or anything at this point.
No, actually, most of these do trigger Keyboard Maestro, which then triggers SoundMiner. Some of these go directly, but within if we, for instance, we call them up, basically, see layout here is hauling up a hotkey that I've just arbitrarily assigned, and then if I call it Keyboard Maestro, layout recall 1 listens for that hotkey and then uses the Apple event. Or no, it doesn't. It uses just a menu. So just recall layout 1. So what I found is that the Stream Deck doesn't work as reliably for doing direct connections stuff. They really want you to have like a little SDK to really access stuff really, really well. So I don't even know that Stream Deck can call a straight menu from an app. And maybe it can, maybe I'm missing it. But since the thing is, a lot of these were already built for me in Keyboard Maestro, I was already using hotkeys or different things to do them. So this was just an extra step of just triggering it with Stream Deck. And then as we look at other ones, you'll see some of them are definitely using the Apple events that you've written to sort of trigger things. But in most cases, I'm calling up basically hotkeys in the Stream Deck to keep it simple. Or in some of them are direct key triggers. There's a way you can basically...
I think the problem there is it has to be context aware, right? So SoundMiner would have to be the forefront application, and your Stream Deck might be swapping all kinds of different modes. Is that how it works? Yeah,
I think so. I'm sort of still a novice a bit with it as far as the inner workings, but I've just found that having it trigger Keyboard Maestro, which then triggers SoundMiner, seems to work really reliably, and there doesn't seem to be really any appreciable lag. I mean, it seems to be pretty much instantaneous. So I haven't really found a downside to leaving Keyboard Maestro as sort of
You've just got to come up with hotkeys.
Yeah, come up with enough hotkeys. Exactly. Well, that's exactly it. But there is a way if we go back to the Keyboard Maestro, you can
say,
actually
make me a random string of keyboard shortcuts.
If you look over here on the right, there is actually a Keyboard Maestro automation.
Oh.
And
That
so if
must
you
be new.
drag, this is pretty new. If you drag this out, it's a little confusing, but you can basically, you could put a title in there, close whatever, close a window. And then you ignore this. And then when you go back to Keyboard Maestro, under the trigger, you basically say, let me make a new one here real quick. And this has proved not to be particularly robust. So I will say that it's worked for some of these, but not. You say new trigger, and you say USB device key trigger. And then you click there, and then you basically push the button on the keyboard. And again, I think this has to be closed for this to work. And I push that, and it should say, there you go, Stream Deck R, and this is the button, basically. So now this is the input trigger for whatever else I'm going to do here. But the weird thing is, and I haven't figured out why, certain things sort of trigger twice or don't trigger at all. Some of them work great, and some of them just don't work. So when in doubt, if this doesn't work, I just do it as a hotkey trigger, And
Gotcha.
again, start coming up with every random little cult control modify shift 7 or whatever. But
Opens up the gates of hell when you do a certain keystroke.
Yeah, but so the layouts is one thing that I've certainly been playing with. Then I started to think, doing things with like check marks and things like that. And this is one of the ones where doing them as a key trigger didn't work, so I had to do it other way. But a lot of times I want to check things, uncheck things, show checked, and I had hotkeys for it, but then I forget what they are. And this way, I have these 4 buttons here, which is basically check selected. So check those, uncheck selected. If I check them again and push this one, it's like check equals is basically show the check.
Show them. Yeah.
Yeah. And then check X, uncheck all. So just, fairly useful for when you're doing stuff pretty quickly and you just want to use the check marks temporarily. And so, again, I'm just making my own little silly graphics using the Stream Deck thing. They're not really ideal, but I know in my mind what they mean. And so it works. And then a lot of the other ones down here are just basically window toggles. So things that I always forget, or I'm sick of hitting the little corner. So, open up the left window or hide it. Open up the right window or hide it. Bring up the spotting list or hide it. Bring up audio comp. So I was on the other screen. Just again, things that I forget which menu it's in or forget.
Yeah. Just speeds things up for sure.
Yeah. Bring up the workflow window.
Do you have any execute? Workflow. Oh, there it is. Okay.
I do. I'll show you. Yeah. And I probably will build a whole page of things. This is run current, basically. So whatever the last one would run with that key. But I'll show you some more up here. And then the other windows are bring up the tag to database window. And then this one, which is sort of working, but sort of not. I think we've talked about that. This one would tag, basically, hit the add button via an Apple event, so that if I had typed in all the things I wanted here, and then I could quickly just select some records and hit that button, and it would tag them instead of having to come up here and hit the add button. Yep. That one's a little glitchy at the moment, but yeah. So most of these things work pretty well, and some of them, if you push it again, they'll hide. Some don't. But as far as workflows go, yeah. So one thing I was starting to play with, and I don't use it a lot, but I was thinking it would be quite useful to have, is colors. So if I pull up my little color window, basically each one of these is just executing a workflow, and you won't be able to see it because it's on the other screen. But if I go to my execute workflow, I have basically color 1 through color 19 and color remove as executable workflows. So if we call up for example, I can just call up the workflow window again. And
we'll
so,
see them. Yeah.
So color 1 just sets the color to those various things. So from the Stream Deck, if I push blue, all those change to blue. If I push, red, all these change to red. And if I want to clear them, I just push the X, clear colors, and it resets those back to nothing. So, it's a lot faster than calling up a workflow each time and running it or anything like that. And it's visually, I can just go, okay, I need these yellow for now, and let's make these kind of a darker yellow. And so I just went and kind of color sampled your actual colors with the little sampler. Oh, yeah. So they're the identical colors as that pop up, or as close as the Stream Deck will match them. And,
nice. And what do you tend to use colors for? Let's talk about that quickly.
I haven't figured out a ton of uses. I mean, I use them for organizing when I'm. One of the things I use them for is, let's say I'm kind of try to compare 2 different sets of sounds for possible duplicates. I'll color one set, one color, and the other one from there. So let's say I have 2 old libraries that are more or less the same. Now I want to sort them by duration, looking for duplicates and things like that. Just to have them colored helps me differentiate, like which one is from which side. Yeah, and also if I sort them by duration and I see one whole set of color, and then all of a sudden I start seeing them alternating back, forth, back, forth, back, forth, that's usually a pretty good indication to me that all of a sudden, okay, there's a range of duplicates, right, that are matching in duration and came from two different locations.
Well, that's a good tip. Good tip, yeah.
Yeah, when I'm doing some investigative stuff and sort of merging old libraries or troubleshooting things like that. I mean, I had thoughts at one point of, organizing, ambiances versus something. I mean, you could do that. It's a big job for imposing on a library after the fact. But certainly, like working on a show, I thought, if you were spotting things for editors, you might be able to come up with a color scheme that meant something. And I mean, it's pretty limitless in a way, what you could use it for. I mean, again, I think that
I know some people use it as sort of the color scheme denotes where they are in the mastering process. So when something kind of first comes in, it hasn't been denoised, it's one color. And then after they've gone through RX, it goes through another color. Once it's had all of its bumps and slates and everything taken out, it's another color. So that way they can kind of just see all the different stages that a sound file is in before it gets mastered and metadata.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, I mean, I don't tend to do this in my library, but if you put raw recordings in your library, for example, maybe you color them red to indicate, like, hey, danger, this is, not a polished sound or something. Or you could even put like red for like restricted things that you want to be careful of using or something like you have permission to have, but you need to think about, dialogue lines, for example, something like, loop group, maybe you have it, which you can't legally use again or something, so you could kind of think, you could build a little key of what different colors mean to you, green might be ambience, nature or something. I don't know, could be anything, but I just thought if I was going to use it, this is a much cooler interface to just be able to call it up and just, tap them, and clear them
super
really
fast.
quickly. So, and ignore my stupid little smiling face. That's just always a home key I put on every Stream Deck page to get me back to the top level really quickly of my sort of setup.
I thought that was a mirror. You hacked in a mirror there.
So that's kind of my first page of Stream Deck. I'll erase that other key in a minute. Oh, other two things that I use a lot. I'm doing a lot of database management in one of the hats that I wear. And to be able to archive and restore a database, this is using some Apple events, but if I wanted to archive that database, I could simply hit archive and type in a name, and save it wherever I want, and then come back and restore it with the other key, the restore key here. Easy way to back up databases that I need to have a backup of in case somebody wants access to it again someday down the line. But, in the past I would take and create a new local database, copy all the, merge the records via the librarian menu or something. And this is just so much easier to just save a little standalone file. So
and that works for server and local databases, I think, right?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. And so actually it's been really good. And then like I can restore it to, like I can take a server database, archive it. And then if somebody else wants access to it, I just restore it to a local database that I can just give them the database then so that they can have a copy of it. Or I could restore it to the network if I needed to. So... And then, but this is these things sort of all came after the fact. The main thing I started to play with was Radium, and I realized that there were things in Radium that I really wanted to do that I was sort of tired of trying to remember hotkeys and different things. So if I push Radium here, basically it switches to my Radium page. And on that page as well, as if I push this, it'll actually open Radium. So it's just, focuses the Radium window. That's what this one will always do. So it's set up for 5 sample slots before you added the 6th one. And 5 is usually most enough for me. So I probably will leave this at 5 because I'm going to run out of keys otherwise. But, for example, if I just go back and pick a sound, doesn't really matter what. Let's find some wind or something. Voices Beast, here we go. And so basically I push load into 1 and it'll load into 1. And, I could come down here and I could load this into 2 and I could load this into 3. And whatever, and now, right? Sound just whatever I've just done. And of course, maybe I want to reverse the sound that's in 1. So I have over here 4 reversing buttons, which basically just reverse the slots. So it focuses the slot and then it issues the reverse command. So I can sit here and reverse this back and forth, whatever I want. And I find it useful a lot of times if I've got 5 sample slots up and running, I might only want to play 2 of them at a time. So, I loaded an airplane into 3, which is fairly useless. So I could come over here and I could basically mute slot 3 so that, when I'm going to play something, right, I'm just playing the first 2. Or I could have just soloed those 2 either way. Mm-hmm. And again, the command, solo cancels the other one. That's right. So, but you can clear it by pushing it again. So, and then I wanted an easy way to clear something of a slot too. So I have a few different ways to do that. Well, one thing I could do too real quick is if I adjusted a bunch of parameters here, for example, I can basically hit this, copy all parameters, come down here and paste it. And that's my shortcut for just, that's one thing I know we've been talking to you a lot about, is just being able to copy. Now that we can do that, this copies all and pastes all in the next slot. And so I could paste it all again down here and things like that. So you see, that's a super useful one for when you're matching stuff around. And
because I'll jump in here and just say that even though the Radium window has its own key commands, it's happened to me quite often where the Radium window doesn't have focus. And then I've gone and done something else. So using the Stream Deck to actually send an Apple event, there's no ambiguity as to what it is actually that it's doing. It's not like you're conflicting with another hotkey.
Right. And some of these I know, like for example, clear, I'm back in Keyboard Meister now. Like, for example, this basically sends the command focus slot 1. So it forces it to focus, to where it wants, and then it clears. Basically does a keystroke, which actually is just triggering your keystroke within Radium right under the menu. But yeah, some of the ones like clear all, I want to tell basically clear all doesn't really work unless Radium's in the foreground, right? So definitely some of these that I have basically issue this first, which is just like focus Radium. Make sure Radium is the foreground thing. Because some of them without that would basically just kind of error out, because what I find is, I'm clicking back and forth screens normally on my both different screens. SoundMiner's on one, Radium's on the other, and I might not always be focused on Radium. So things like, Keyboard Maestro and Stream Deck together allow you to send these little commands, and you've written a lot of them, and some of them are really very useful. So being able to like load these things this is just using a keyboard command, but the mute is using an Apple event, and I think the solo is using an Apple event. That one also solo focuses, to make sure that it knows which slot to go to.
Do you have clear? The clear slots. How are they being run right now? Is that an Apple event?
So clear slot is focuses it, and then a keyboard thing. But the clear all basically comes up with the same thing. Activate Radium. So this one's pretty useful. So when I'm done with a task, I might just want to reset everything. So clear all basically focuses it, clears it, and then just pauses and does that. And, the nice thing about clear all is that it actually resets everything. It resets all the parameters and things too, where the normal clear doesn't, which is what I want, because a lot of times I just want to clear the sample and, load something else, and I don't want to reset all the work I've done. But the clear all is kind of like clear the plate, starting over, going to do something completely new. And then one other thing that I found really useful to do was, let me just load something back in here, is to be able to start and stop record from here. And then I realized, okay, I want to do something else. So let me pause it for a second. I don't want to make a new recording, but I do want to pause it. And I just found that kind of getting up here to click that thing was kind of a pain, you got
to grab your mouse, you got to move it around.
You got to find it exactly, it's a smaller target and stuff. So then I go, okay, then I'm ready. Maybe I loaded something else, or I changed something. Maybe I've come in here and changed the octave down or something, and I can just start recording again. And then when I'm finally done, just stop recording, and there we go. And then I'll have my new sound. I thought about targeting. I'm out of space now, but targeting the naming options window as well to sort of pop this up, because that's a really useful thing that I haven't really started to use yet, but I just sort of discovered it. So, I could consider trying to figure out a way to hotkey that. Again, part of the problem with these Stream Decks is you think, I'm never going to use this many buttons, and then you pretty quickly go, God damn it, I'm out of buttons already. It's like, come on, give me more.
You need a second one. You can chain them, I think, can't you?
You can chain them, yeah. I mean, you can also, again, build, sub pages and all kinds of things and stuff. But so this is kind of where I'm at the moment, and I'm constantly thinking what other cool things to put on there. But I do find that the load, the solos, the clears and stuff enable me to move pretty quickly, to sort of call things up and, to quickly reverse sounds and things like that. Again, just things that have small enough target area or whatever. They don't want to constantly have to move my mouse around to do them, Yeah,
it's also different. It's a mind thing as well. Like when you touch that mouse, it's different than when you're playing notes on the keyboard or something, When you're playing notes on the keyboard, you want to reach for controls, you want to push buttons. You don't want to be grabbing a mouse and moving it around and trying to find something.
Yeah, and these buttons are very clear enough to me that, they do exactly, I sort of muscle memory of just reaching out to them, especially like record. It's a big red button. I can just push it to start and push it to stop
Hmm.
and things like that. And so yeah, I'd be curious. I'm sure I know other people are using the Stream Deck to do different things too, and stuff. But this is sort of where I'm at the moment with things, and I was thinking about taking away some of the layouts because I pretty much could get by with 5 layouts. I could free up a few more of these buttons to do some other things.
You're the one that asked for
and
9.
I know. I feel. I use 9 all the time, every single one of them. What do you mean? No, I do. And actually, now that I can, and the other thing we talked about, which I'll just show real quick, is the cool thing with Stream Deck too. These buttons right now actually have the word layout in the button when I created it. But you could come in here and you could type like normal view or something like that, and you could. It's a little big, but you could call this one
DX dialogue or something.
show or. Yeah, exactly. So if you didn't put that in there, you could say, yeah, that's my dialogue layout or whatever. So you can actually do cool things with just laying out text right on the thing too. So you could have it, you don't have to remember even the name of your layout. The other thing I was considering doing was if I had more room or building a page of actual databases. Now that you can drag database order 1 through 10, you could actually create, 10 databases right here with the name of the database on it. So you could just simply call up any database that you want without remembering, okay, my dialog database for the show is in slot 7. Well, you don't need to know that anymore. It would just appear on a little page of your databases.
Awesome.
I think you can do, is it 10? Is that the limit under database?
Yeah, because you've got like command 1 through 0.
1 through 0. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and so you could simply recall those via menu command, right? Recall database 1 through 0. So, but yeah, so that's where I'm at the moment with all that stuff. It's kind of fun. It's fun to sort of, the little hotkey creator for Stream Deck is a little bit of a pain, but you can drop images on there and kind of do some things. But again, I just try to make use of the graphics that they have available and just figure out things that my brain would remember, basically. None of these things really make logical sense, but spotting is a sort of a list and comp is a little media file. I don't know, it's like you do the best you can.
I think those files have to be PNG files, right?
Yeah, it creates a little PNG thing.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Do you want to talk about, do you have time? Do you want to talk about any metadata stuff? I know you're going to do a whole thing on a whole class on it.
Yeah, we're going to do a whole thing at some point here in the other Zoom area of recording and things like that. But yeah, I mean, I think the thing that if we were to talk about anything, just the power of this little window right here, right? I mean, I know I've been pretty talked with you a lot over since you started developing it and things and coming up with stuff. But just as far as I'll probably avoid the other workflow stuff for a little bit just because it's I'm trying to still work out a whole workflow to help people with stuff with the file naming and stuff. But just to be able to do the power of this, the workflow stuff, is like amazed how many people don't yet know about this, compared to the old way of editing things, and especially in the past, coming here, and a lot of people would just come in here and do this, edit by hand, this field, and then come over here and edit this field by hand. And yeah, eventually I would love to show this whole workflow of, processing with these scripts and things like that. Something. Yeah, but and we used to have used to be able to come in here. There's lots of ways to do things, which is great. But the problem is people kind of forget that there are new ways. So you could come in here before and do a find and replace, right? And you can I used to use this for years and all this. Well, this is sort of antiquated now comparatively. And then of course you have the admin window, which I know is basically going to break in Catalina, I think, right? And,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
and a lot of people still use that.
Yeah, I know tons of people that are still using it, and I'm going, well, just use the workflows. And they're like, what are you talking about? What's a workflow? I'm like, oh, God. So, yeah, I mean, if
So what would you say are the benefits? I mean, obviously, we know what the benefits are.
Yeah, well.
But what would you say they are?
I think it's just very intuitive, first of all, because think of it as like a little building block, right? So I want to make some changes. So, for example, let's just do some things that won't completely screw me up that I can reload my metadata later, because this is my actual library. But let's say I want to do some manipulation of some of the text. So, for example, I want to change the case and I want to change it to title case, the effects name, right? This is just some people like things different ways. I keep all my my effects field in all uppercase. That's just the convention I'm used to. But let's say that's not your convention. So you want to come in here and make a big selection, and I want to do this. Well, you can simply hit run, and there you go, right? They've changed. Mm-hmm. But
you full undo.
Yeah, full undo. But you don't have to. But the thing is, you don't have to stop there and go, okay, I want to do that first. Then I also want to basically capitalize the or let's say put description into entirely lowercase. So description. So now when I run this, okay, there they both go, right?
Mhm.
And so, the real power here is that I can just string a whole bunch of things together. I could also come in here and say set field category to rain. Let's say that these were all miscategorized or something. Now when I run it, I'm just like, whoops, because I'm in category full. Sorry, I'm doing that. So, very quickly, I've just made all these changes. The other benefit, of course, is that the workflows are very fast compared to some of the other, I know the way you've coded it is this, that the workflows are, stupidly fast when doing stuff on 10,000 files. It just
And
screams
I'll
through
talk
them.
about that quickly. So the way that it
Yeah.
worked before, especially when you called up that old info window that people still use, is it would collect all of the metadata. So all of it. It didn't matter
Right.
if you're going to change it or not. And then it would change it. So you would change like the show. And then it would save all of that metadata again. And
Right.
everything was all sort of RAM based. Whereas using a workflow, what it does is it queries the database just for a few records at a time. It figures out what has changed between the two records, which is what makes the undo so magical as well, because it's not having to undo all the metadata. It's just the metadata fields that have changed.
Right.
So it makes it very, very efficient. So it can plow through hundreds of thousands of records, no problem at all. No
Yeah.
RAM requirements. Whereas the old info window, you can remember, like, this is going back to like 2005.
Yeah.
People had like 20,000 records, 60,000
Right.
records. Like that was a ton.
Yeah. No, I remember
it just
once my
doesn't hold
database got quite large and I was still using this, you'd hit something and you'd just start seeing kind of going in blocks of 100 and you just kind of walk away for a little while knowing it was going to take a while to get through it all. And
Exactly.
now, the workflow, and it doesn't seem to be affected, almost as many as I can stack in here, it doesn't seem to affect the speed. It doesn't, in other words, it seems like I can string 20, 30 things in here together and it'll do them all. I just say, there's so many possible things too. I use this constantly, remove 5 characters from the end of the file name or something. Somebody has a tag at the end of the things that I don't want on there or whatever. And so, and again, I've gone through the preferences and kind of ordered the normal fields that I'm going to work with, that's one other really, one other super great thing that you did was to put that in the preferences under field order, right? So
Yep.
if I come in here, there's the fields that I'm really interacting with almost all the time. So in something like the workflow, they appear right at the beginning. So again, add and remove, append and prepend constantly. If I'm doing a whole bunch of files that I've just created, I might very well prepend to the beginning of the file name, ambience exotic, which is the tag for me that I use for that. So there in an instant, I can basically add the tag that I need to all these file names, which will then allow me to parse out, which we'll talk about another time. But, so appending and prepending information is amazing. Change case, we've talked about, copy one field to the other is amazing. These were ones I think, we talked about sort of copying metadata from one field from the first record and copying it to the rest. So I think that one, but basically if I ran this one, also being able to bypass these things is amazing. And as you put in there, if you right click and you can say bypass all except this, so you can really quickly kind of, a lot of times I just leave things up on the screen and just, call it the one I want to work on. Yeah, I think I might have requested that one.
Yeah.
And we talked about that because I was like, sometimes I'll have 10 things up here and I want to run little batches of, yeah. But, this one, I think, if I remember, I haven't used this one in a while, but this one should take that metadata from the very first one here and just paste it in all the rest of them, right? So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is.
So there you go. So, it's almost infinitely powerful, the amount of manipulation that you can do on large groups of records here. And, then you can clear them. I'll just show you, like, I have a couple of presets, like I have one just called cleanup. And basically it just says, like, it does the uppercase of this for me. It removes multiple spaces in both the effects name and the file name because, people get sloppy and you got extra spaces. It removes leading and trailing spaces in both of those. So that's a pretty quick one, right? And then I have one in here, I think, called, this one just clears all the show fields. For example, when I'm resetting databases for people and they want to start over on a new copy of a database, they don't want to, drag along all the old show fields. So this one just goes in there and then sets all these fields to basically become blank. Although
cool.
I think we're thinking that maybe this isn't working in the current version that set.
Yeah, I added a remove, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's a new remove one. Yeah, so I think I'd have to again. This is a bit of an old one, but I'd have to remove this one.
Right down.
You could do something. You'd figure out a way, or the other way to do it is to do a find and a replace, because find and replace, you could basically find things and replace with blank. So
and you could always do a space as well. That's another way
Right.
to sort of hack things. Is you could have
Right.
done a
Just
set
put a
field with just a
space.
single
Yes,
space in it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Numbering is very useful for starting to number. If you want to add numbers, a lot of people like to keep track of their library with like a custom number at the end of each file name, So if you just keep track of what the last number is when you add a new batch, you could come in here and say, append starting at number, 4357 to file name, in the
Hmm.
format this or something, and you could just then start numbering them and keep adding them into all the file names. So pretty useful for certain things. If I have a big batch of sounds and I just want to add a number to them, that's really useful.
Yeah, I don't think a
Field,
lot of people appreciate that you can use it on the file name field. They just think, oh, I can use it on, because
yeah,
historically you couldn't really edit the file name field like in the old
yeah,
info
no, and
window.
and I
Whereas
mean,
with this you can.
yeah, and again, in my layout too is from my way to interact directly with the file name, and I still will come in here occasionally and just if I need to do a quick fix, I'll just edit it and go in and edit it right directly.
Hmm.
So yeah, and I mean that definitely the workflow metadata for doing stuff right on the file names is great, especially for when you want to get your file names in a consistent form. With my library is very rigid about how the file names appear and everything, for a very good reason. And so if you find a mistake or something and you want to come in here and make a change, for example, sometimes I'll put in like, here I might have, well, I'll show you like what a common thing that would happen is when let's say I'm making these files in Pro Tools. Well, I'm naming them right in Pro Tools and I'm naming them with what I believe are the right things. But what often can happen is, would hit, I'll have called it, would hit or something wrong, right?
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
So I come in here now. Well, I have these scripts to sort of try to parse out these fields. Again, we'll give people a little hint, but if I run this script, auto expand the long ID, it's going to error now because it's like I can't figure out what this is. Well, the way this works is that this little chunk at the beginning here uses a script to go outside SoundMiner to this lookup table. When it finds a match, it goes ahead and fills in these things. So if I basically
We'll talk about that later.
yeah. So, but for example, this is something very useful for me to just come back in here and go, oh, okay, I realize I screwed that up, and now if I run that script, it would fill those in. So if I, if I clear one of these and type something wrong, if I now run that script again, it basically automatically fills that back in. And again, that's a bigger issue when we talk about, if we'll talk about a bunch of stuff about how these scripts work and stuff. But what I often find is that I need to come in here and change file names en masse because I screwed up and I didn't remember my own category. Some of them I've changed over the years. And so everything in my library that under swish and whoosh now uses SWSH. Well, it used to use WHSH. And so sometimes I forget and I put the wrong thing in and then the script fails and I go, okay, I'll change all of these back, things like that.
So when you're exporting things from Pro Tools, is it pretty much just file name, or do you put in anything into, say, like
Just file
broadcast
name.
wave?
No, I do everything. I just do the file name. Then I bring it right into SoundMiner and I finish all the metadata right in SoundMiner because it's just so much easier to do it here. The file name itself always gives me enough information to remember enough that I don't really worry about, if it takes me a little time until I come back here. So, and when we talk about later, the file name, it basically has certain number of things which break apart. So this is the category. This next chunk basically is going to break out to become the effects name, which is a field. I don't know if that's a standard field or if that's custom to us.
It's a standard field.
Is that
now.
standard now? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So everybody has access to that. So the idea is just, if I go back to my main layout one, is that I have, a category, or I have a category subcategory, and then I have a category full, which I think we asked you to make at one point, which is basically just a hyphenated version. So ambience is the category, room tone is the subcategory, and this view, I can just view it all in one, which just saves me a little real estate. The effects name is sort of like the shortened version of the sound. It's like if it was like a sample, it would just say like, cello note 3 or something. And then the description is the much more information about it. So we've always worked this way. I prefer to work this way of having them both available. This is just a much shorter view of things. And then, the designer, what show it came from, and then what library it's in, basically. So a lot of these are doubled up between my sort of copy and.
So what would you say
copy.
would be the minimum amount of metadata? Say you buy a library.
Yeah.
What's one of your biggest pet peeves of things that are missing?
My biggest pet peeve would be really badly done file names, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but if you want, I can show you a work in progress of something that is so for example, and I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus, but for example, this is a work in progress of a lot of the sounds that were given out from the Game Developer Conference for free. And before this goes in my library, I've been slowly going through it and kind of picking up stuff. Here's a big pet peeve: no description whatsoever, right? I mean, I think the minimum things I think you need to give me in some capacity would be some sense of a category, if possible. I'd love to have somewhere in the name a decision made about what kind of category, even if it's a made up category. It doesn't have to match my category field, but if you give me something, I could then remap it to my categories.
And you can do it in batch as well if it comes from, like, if there's multiple coin drops. And you decide you want to have it as Foley, coin or whatever.
Right. So
you can just do a find and replace.
Right. So here I could, like, let's say I see, okay, stoneware. So I'll go, okay, stoneware. I'll find those if I can type. Oh, come on. So, here's these things. Well, now I can switch to my view that has the file name. And here would be a classic example. In my database, I would put these in a category called kitchenware. So here I would come to append, prepend, go right to the file name, and prepend this, which is my category for kitchenware. So that goes right at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And so now if I basically ran my little script, again, which will do a little teaser, but run the long ID script, basically we'll go ahead and put that category in for me automatically.
Very nice.
So I don't have to remember it. So certainly, my biggest pet peeve is just simply consistency within people's own naming schemes. So they send out a library where even within their group of file names, let me switch back to file name and I'll just show everything. You've got and again, these came from lots of different people, so I don't expect all these to be the same. But what I often find is people selling libraries that even within their own library, their file names aren't even consistent. Some of them might have at the beginning, like, let's say if this was a coin, I'll just undo this, but one might have like this and one might have like this,
Yes. Yeah.
Just inconsistencies. So when I go to manipulate this metadata, I have to kind of go one by one through there because I can't, or here's another one. Here's the file name that was given, breathe. I mean, or breath. And then the other information, tempo 61. I mean, these things are not particularly useful, right? I mean, I think so. People tend to err either on the side of really, really long file names that have, everything, or on the side of sort of things that are, some very, very simple. So, I mean, I think...
Do you have a sort of a limit to your file name that you like?
No.
Is it like 64 characters or anything? You're not
No,
that
I don't like it to hit 256 characters or something, but I mean, I would think like between like 30 and 60 characters is usually pretty good. Again, because I'm putting in usually the information, which is going to be the effects name into the file name. I'm definitely going to put sort of a short version of the description into the file name itself. I mean, I want enough information that when I'm in Pro Tools and I'm sorting my region list, I can look at the file and tell you what it is without having to come back to SoundMiner to look at the metadata or without having to call it up somehow. I think the file name should include kind of everything you need to know. What's category? Tell me a little bit about the sound. Who's the designer? What show did it come from, or what library did it come from? Those are my sort of four main pieces that I want in the file name. And then, then we have all the other fields in here, which we can fill in for all the rest of the stuff, right? Again, the file name doesn't have to contain everything about the file. I don't need to know in the file name what sample rate it is, for example. People put in there all the time, 192K. I don't need to know that. If I'm in Pro Tools or I'm in SoundMiner, I'm going to know what the sample rate of the file is because I'm using it. I don't really need to know things like that. So I think people can go overboard with putting in too much information. Let me switch back again to my library. So you see this is a pretty average file length for me, just enough information to show you kind of what it is. So, White 8 Big Drawers for Rap Party from John Carter or whatever. Wool of Wine, that's enough information for that. I know what it is. It's a wine of a dog and whatever. So that's the thing. And then as far as categories, again, category and subcategory. I think that's a good way to organize libraries, and that's a whole other thing. But that's a pretty common sort of setup, So wood has wood hits, wood cracks. You can see wood, and you can sort by categories and stuff. Airplanes get aircraft prop, aircraft jets. These are lots of things like this, but yeah, and then description, so a lot of times you just get no description, no sort of useful information, and so for me, I think effects name, description, designer show, library. These are the things that, again, this is my main view. If I have no other view but this, I'm happy. This gives me everything I need to know pretty much. And then you get the other, you have categories like microphone and location, and those are useful, I guess, if you want to put those in and things. I tend to just put that information in the description because I know the description is always being searched, for example.
Right.
So if I wanted to record something with my parabolic, instead of putting it in the microphone field, it's probably just going to put right into the description because I know that I can then find it really easily with one word. And because you have a limited number of search terms, I limit a little bit not having to light up microphone and location and all these things by just keeping that in the description. Since description can be quite a long field if you want it to be. I have no problem with description becoming 2 or 3 sentences if it has all of the searched words that I want to put in there, if that makes sense.
What totally does. And what about multi-channel audio files? So let's say that you're recording car buys, whatever. Would you prefer to have multiple sound files of like
No.
stereo pairs, or would you rather have?
It's a little pet peeve of mine. I know a lot of people are delivering libraries with sort of multi-track things. A car buy, maybe. A gun library, maybe. What I would much prefer is for the people who are issuing a library to make decisions and give me the best sound, whether that's layering things together. I don't need multiple mics if it's pretty clear that one of them is the best. I don't normally keep multiple mic positions. If I'm recording something with multiple mics, when I go into the mastering process, I'm going to make the decision like what's the best sound I can get out of this, and put it into a stereo file, or if it wasn't recorded as a surround file. Trying to find. I know that because the thing is, if you give me 8 possible microphone positions and one of them is a pair of Sanken CO100K mics, I promise you those are the ones I'm likely to use because I might want to pitch those sounds. I don't need the 416 that was facing it. I don't need the distant Omni version of that. It's pretty rare that those things would be that useful to me. And libraries are tending to get bigger as everybody starts to record and master in 32-bit, 192K and issue these libraries that way. Now you could download a library of 100 sounds and it might be 300 gigabytes or something, and you're just like, it's getting a little kind of silly.
A little crazy.
Yeah, a little crazy. So no, again, if you were recording something, say with like an electromagnetic frequency microphone and a different type of microphone entirely, sure. Then, I could see you giving me 2 stereo pairs, and maybe you want to put them in the same, like into a quad file just for, then everything's lined up. So when I come in here, I could use the leg picker and I could select, the left and the right of it or something. And maybe, one of the other.
Because one of the requests I've been getting is, especially when it comes to ambisonic and B format recordings, is to have the 4 channels for the B format, but also include a stereo mix down. What do you think about things like that?
Yeah, I tend to, if I look at my ambisonic stuff, I usually have, here's my original B format recording of that. And then I've just mastered it into 8 channels. And then at this point, if I wanted a stereo of that, I would just come in here and take the stereo.
Gotcha.
So I think for me, it would be confusing to have a stereo embedded along with the B format. Again, if I'm not paying really close attention to the channel layout, I might think that's a 6-track file and just paste it onto a 5/1 track. I know depending if they've labeled it really well and it's really clear down here, the leg picker will show you different things. And certainly when I've seen some car recordings, and I think I probably have some in my library somewhere where we did, engine left, it's tail mic, interior, this kind of stuff when you're cutting cars. Absolutely. That's useful. And things like that, because then you can keep everything in sync. You could paste the whole group of them, and then you could cut in and out interior, exterior, things like that. But I think for design element kind of stuff, I just want the best sound. It can be stereo. I don't need every microphone that you put out there. If 4 of the 6 microphones really are clearly inferior to the other 2, just give me the 2 best ones,
Totally.
Yeah.
Good tips, Tim.
Yeah. What else? I don't know. It's a never-ending exploration, this program, which is lovely. But
so when do you think you're going to be doing a full metadata?
I think soon. This Saturday, we're going to do a little one on microphones and recorders. And then I think pretty quickly after that, I'm going to do a 3-part thing on recording, mastering, and databasing. So I think with the following week is my guess, we'll sort of really get into it and hopefully be able to present it in a way that really makes sense, and kind of starting from building your library from the ground up and how to organize things. And again, all I can really show is my workflow, and it may not be perfect for everybody, of course, but it might help jog some ideas for other people on how to come up with their own scheme and how to organize their library and what they want to do with it and things like that.
Do you organize by path name at all? Are your files sort of nested within multiple paths?
Yeah.
Do you do it by show category or?
Yeah, I mean both. I mean my top level of my thing, and I'm reluctant to call it up only because of if there's any NDA stuff showing.
Of course,
but basically my library is organized on a top level, like boutique effects, commercial effects, Foley, show. I have a designer folder of things that have been traded to be my designer friends and things. So David Farmer has a folder of things that he's shared with me, or So yeah, and then again, I rarely have to interact with it on that level, but I absolutely want to be able to if I had to. So I could pretty much easily go up to my library and say show, fellowship, and then within there, everything will be organized by category. So I use the mirror, right? If people don't know the mirror command, we can talk about that real quick too, maybe for one quick second, because that's like a super useful thing. So let's say I just call up a show, Happily Never After, which has a lot of categories in it, right? So let's
and you
say,
just use the option key there.
Yeah, sorry. Right. One of the coolest things is you hold on option and click on any category, you can kind of jump around and you can call up stuff. So, Dark Crystal. So, okay, let's say Dark Crystal. Here's stuff from Dark Crystal. So there's 810 design sounds from Dark Crystal. And let's say I was ready to, let's say this was in a temporary show database while I'm working on the show, which is pretty common for me. In other words, it's not going to be moved to my permanent library until I'm sure that all the metadata is done and I'm ready for it to kind of live there. So select all. Database menu mirror, and this is how I'm going to always basically do the final copy into my final location. So my library is all kept in FLAC now. I haven't found any reason to sort of stay in WAVE. You're just wasting space, but let's say you could do it in either format. So I go to FLAC. I want all my files interleaved. So, and this is a final check to make sure that everything, if it's not, there might be some split mono files still from the design phase or whatever. Embedded, just make sure that the metadata is getting embedded. It's probably already embedded. And then usually I would come down here and I would say show then category. So it's going to take and build me a folder with the name of the show, Dark Crystal AOR, Age of Resistance. And then it's going to build subcategories. So it's going to put, again, it's not going to put the full category. It's going to just put musical, right? And then paper, rattles, thunder. Use as many cores. I usually leave one left over, but
just like it could be on Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. And then I just use the file name because my file name, again, is created right when I create the file. So I'm not going to make any changes, but you could come in here and use a field build, right, and to change the file name plus something or whatever, if you wanted to. I tell it to make sure to use the mono extension because I just want to know, file name limit, don't truncate anything, basically. Strip out some illegal characters if something snuck in, then great. And then, just use the original source and sample. Now, the only place this bites me is that if there are any 32-bit files in here, they'll error out. And what I'll simply do at that point is I'll just go back into there, sort by bit depth. Yeah, and then select those 32-bit ones, come in here and change them to be 24-bit, 190, or whatever. I'd match the sample rate, but change the bit depth and just do those manually at the end. I don't intentionally put 32-bit files in my library. But, so if I come here and I do this and then it says, where do you want to put it? I can just put it right on my desktop and it's very quick. And you'll see this thing is now basically cranking through. And let me just hide this and open up the folder. So this folder is now basically being created in real time, you'll see. And the name of the folder is Dark Crystal AR, and it's basically now going through one by one, and it's creating the subfolders, and within that, it's putting the files. And so there you go. I mean, instant organized library, right? And this would be my final library, which lives on my drive. And then once I'm done with this, I would drop all these back into my all effects database, for example. Or you could set up that as a watched folder, which is also a really clever thing too. You could have it do that automatically. I usually still just do it manually. Then I can just be really aware of what I'm doing. But this has taken 800 records. So
especially with 23 cores. Yeah, just very quick. And I'll also just jump in here and say that if you were mirroring to a WAV file, it's not just sound miner metadata that's getting embedded. It's a whole truckload of other metadata. There's XMP metadata, which is Adobe's open format. So that shows up in all the Adobe products. There's the list chunk. So that shows up in Reaper. There's IXML metadata. So that shows up in Steinberg, Nuendo, Broadcast Wave. So
I think I've tacked out the B wave fields from a long time ago, just because I noticed that I don't use them and they slow down the embedding slightly. Although I don't know if that would affect Mirror. I did it when under embedding. I've taken that out for embedding, I think, but under Mirror might still be probably doing everything. But yeah, so this is my final step of how to put everything in case or in its final place, and then so if I ever had to come back here pretty quickly, I could get back to Dark Crystal and into the mud things that we recorded for it, So I find mirroring, I'm doing it constantly. This is that's the final step for me. When everything is ready to go to its final home, mirror is what puts it there, and it organizes it all nicely. And it can skip duplicates, and you have different behaviors you can have it do. And so, yeah,
Wonderful.
I need to do that. But
well, thanks, Tim, for your time. This has been very educational, and it's great to see.
Yeah, we jumped all around, but had a little fun.
Yeah, lots of fun.
Cool,
Wicked,
man. Well, thanks for having me, Justin. We'll talk to you next time.